It's nothing like that in this area. Like I've never experienced anything like this in this area. And it's been hot. Like it's been 90 degrees. It's been close to 100 before. Like we've never experienced no power outages like that.
Yeah, it's
What
crazy.
what's
It was just as
wild
bad
is
today for real.
and what's wild is I heard that like other areas of Bowie too, like they've been experiencing it for 2 weeks, and I had no clue. two
No, but
weeks, bro.
today's not the first day. My power's been going up like that too.
For real?
But it just happened more frequently yesterday. But yeah, my power's been going
Yeah,
up for like a couple months now. You know, for
ain't got
real.
time for that. Ain't got
Hey,
time for that.
that's crazy because that yesterday was my first day. That was my first
Yeah,
day,
my
bro.
journey's going up.
Oh man. All right. So fellas, we can go ahead and get started. Obviously, this is a live stream. So appreciate everybody who will be tuning in live. And we do have a Cardinals writer for SB Nation as well that's scheduled to join us. But we can go ahead and get started once he joins in, he's welcome to the conversation. So fellas, welcome back to another episode of the Trap or Die podcast. I got my boy Nick and Rye here with me. Nick,
Yeah,
Rye, how y'all feeling tonight, man? Y'all good?
chilling, man. Ready to enjoy the festivities. Shout out my boy Eric. Today's his birthday, 29 years old today.
Yeah,
Going out a
Yes,
little
sir.
later.
Yes,
But
sir.
other
29
than
going to
that, man,
45.
chilling, man.
I'm about to
You
say
know,
he the lightweight. We about to make sure you know what I'm saying. We got babysitting tonight, right? You know what I'm
yeah, I
saying?
already know.
You
Lightweight, you
you know
know,
how the game go.
little
Nick, you
guy.
popping out?
Oh
No
man, I
pressure,
do
you know what I'm
not
saying? Just
know,
asking.
bro.
You heard him? Oh man, ah.
I don't know, bro. Cause I mean, so many plans have been popping up. Thought tomorrow was the day. You know what I'm saying? I popped out last night.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what that
We
means.
we
You got
know
through two
we know the
days.
liar when we hear him. You know what I'm saying? The procrastinator. You know that's Nick for you. You know what I'm saying? But welcome into the show. We got our guy Mookie, Mookie Alexander. Mookie is a writer and covers the Seattle Seahawks for SB Nation. Um, Mookie, it's a pleasure to meet you. You know what I'm saying? We talked for a couple of days trying to book this, but we got you on. And make sure you got the camera showing off. Look, you're trying to show off the gear, man. Make sure that they can
Yeah,
see.
I gotta
There
be
it
like
go.
Russell Wilson. Go
There it
Hawks.
go. Make
Go
sure you
Hawks.
repping, man. But Mookie, man, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining us, boss, man. How you feeling? Like everything good with you?
Yeah, glad to be here. Yeah, we're not scorching hot. Things are reopening in Oregon. I mean, today was the day that everything reopened. All the restrictions are pretty much gone, and I'm just looking forward for football, man. We
Oh
need that
man,
football
I
back in
can't
our
wait,
lives.
dog.
Full house of fans in attendance. I think what
Oh
we've
man.
learned is the sports events in particular, they're better with fans because you don't get those same moments when it's in an empty stadium and all that fake crowd noise. I couldn't stand that.
Oh my goodness. I wonder what it, I really wonder what that was like for a player in a sense, because like even all of us, right? Rod, Nick, when we were younger, we never played. It don't even matter. Like we never played an event where it was like no crowd. Any organized
Right.
sport, it was literally no crowd and it was never that. It was at least your parents and then random people who was waiting for the next game to
Yeah.
start. So everybody was tuning in, and having these guys like playing in a stadium with artificial noise. I don't know, like if that even makes sense for them. Like what if what if the home crowd is cheering for a flag, accidentally cheering for a flag against the home team? Like that don't even make sense sometimes. Just because they want to pump in some noise. I don't know. It does seem weird to me, man.
I don't know if you play a game in like Washington or where the Chargers play, it's either a road game or hardly anybody's there in a normal year.
That is
Oh
true.
man.
What they had like before they moved in with LA, I think they had what like a 27,000 max stadium. It
Yeah,
just did not
they were
work.
in a soccer stadium. They were
Yes.
playing in an MLS stadium, and now they get to share that stadium with the Rams, and the Rams, I'm pretty sure they'll be full or close to it. The Chargers playing in that same stadium. I know Justin Herbert's a good quarterback, but I don't think there are more than 100 Chargers fans in existence. Like everybody else, I think is just there for the experience.
Yeah, they from LA, you know what I'm saying? LA, oh the Chargers doing good. Let's go to a game or two. Check them out right quick.
San
Mookie, so
Diego, San Diego, not that far, is it? Just what, a
I
couple
actually
of
don't
hours?
know. Mookie, do you know how
Sa-
far San Diego is
San
from
Diego
LA?
from where? From LA?
Yeah, maybe like an hour and a half thereabouts. I mean, it's a fair distance, but it's not the other side of the world.
All right.
Yeah, it's solid travel.
That's
They'll make it
true.
up there.
That'll expose some fans.
Are you
But
from Seattle, Mookie?
No, I'm a Bay Area native. I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area near Oakland, and I lived in Seattle for 7 years in my late teens, but I've been out in the Portland area since November 2017. So it's a good experience being on the West Coast. I've lived that East Coast life before. It ain't a good experience. I mean, I lived in New York for a few years. I lived in New York for a few years, and having to watch the Giants and Jets every week is a miserable experience.
That's where you went wrong, man. New York is not the place to start off.
New York is not it, man.
So Seattle's like your favorite team, or that's just the team that you currently work for right now? Like, is that just what you grew up like in the Seahawks or not?
Yeah, I've been big on the Seahawks for 16, 17 years now.
So you are a lucky man. You are a lucky man. Let me tell you something, right? We got Nick, who is he's a Cowboys fan. I'm a Skins fan, and then you got Rye, who is a Titans fan. Now, to give credit to Rye, his team the last couple of years been doing all right, but we have not seen any type of winning. I've suffered the longest, but we in the NFC East have not seen any type of winning for a long time. Like, how does that feel just in general? Because obviously, again, you write for the team or write for SB Nation, covering them, and how does that feel just to consistently write about a team who's in the hunt for a Super Bowl? You're not even talking about making the playoffs. Like, y'all are talking about Super Bowl each and every year. Like, we just talking about hoping to make a wild card.
Yeah, because, since for as long as I've been a Seahawks fan, like the year I moved to Seattle is the year they made their first Super Bowl when Sean Alexander was still there.
Okay.
But I haven't experienced too many bad years. It was the last Holmgren year where everybody got injured and he was retiring. Then the Jim Mora year where he was just the absolute worst coach I've ever seen. So they had to fire him, and that's how we got Pete Carroll. And even that 7-9 year, you can still get the beast mode touchdown against the Saints. They missed the playoffs the next year, but since then it's been largely smooth sailing. So I don't know what it is to actually, I don't know what it feels like to actually write about an awful team or cover an awful team. Like, they're a good team, been a great team. The Super Bowl, I wasn't writing about the Seahawks at the time that they won the Super Bowl, but even these last few years where I've been part of the field goals, it's still been going to the playoffs pretty much every year except 2017. At least getting a couple, 2 playoff wins, I think, one in 2016, one in 2018. So you always had that level of optimism, but I won't lie, not making a serious Super Bowl run these last few years is kind of wearing thin on the fan base. Like, they're tiers of expectations, right? So like the Jaguars, they're not a team that really has many expectations year after year. But for the Seahawks, you got Russell Wilson, you have DK Metcalf and Chris Carson and Bobby Wagner, all these dudes. You expect to make a serious playoff run. But, I mean, our last couple of playoff wins are against Carson Wentz. Hell, not even Carson Wentz, mostly Josh McCown. And then the other playoff win was against Detroit. And Detroit hadn't won a playoff game since pretty much, I'm pretty sure none of us was alive the last time they won a playoff game.
It was probably that year that they played the Skins. I think they lost in the conference round. We had a cakewalk to the Super Bowl.
They blew out Dallas and lost to Washington. Yep. But yeah, you got to enjoy the winning while it lasts, because I think we're well aware that this can go south in a hurry. Like, it doesn't take much for you to go from winning to straight up irrelevant for a while.
So at what point? Because obviously, like I told you, like we were going to talk some Russ, but right before we get into Russ, like, at what point did the shift occur, like in the mindset of the fan base, like when it came to trying to reach these Super Bowls, and then the last couple of years you're starting to realize there's some chinks in the armor now for whatever reasons that obviously the Seahawks community knows. Like, when did that shift actually occur?
Probably that 2018, 2019 range, because, one of the good things for the Seahawks, one of the best things Pete Carroll did, and John Schneider, the GM, is that when the team missed the playoffs in 2017, I mean, they were 9-7, but they would have missed at 10-6 as well. When they missed the playoffs, Wilson did not have a great year. Richard Sherman, of course, had the horrible Achilles injury. Cam Chancellor had a career-ending neck injury. So did Cliff Averill. So you're losing a lot of key guys. It's hard to replace all those dudes. So they made a lot of changes. It was like a mini rebuild, and they're right back into the playoffs in 2018. But I think the shift is when they lost to the Cowboys in that playoff game, and they just kept running Chris Carson for like no
Man.
yards. It's first and second on every time. It is one of the most irritating playoff games I've ever watched because I felt they could have beaten Dallas, and then the defense couldn't get any stops. So now the other part is, these last couple of years, the offense for the most part has delivered, but the defense has been absolutely atrocious. Like the first half of last year, that had to have been some of the worst defense you will ever see at an NFL level. So, like the reason why the
Seahawks staple is defense like that. That's why, it's shocking to see how bad it was at some point.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I think that the fan base is irritated by is that this team was known for not just a great defense, but also a damn good offense, and you had the running game with Marshawn Lynch. So you still have a pretty good offense, although they can go, a week here and there just not playing all that well. But the defense ain't the same. And we shouldn't expect it to be the same because all the Legion of Boom guys are gone.
Yeah.
Only Bobby Wagner's still there. Don't look like they're going to re-sign KJ Wright. So they had to remake the defense. So you go out and you get Jamal Adams, you get an all-pro safety, and then unfortunately he's hurt for several weeks. And I think he had an up and down year despite that Pro Bowl selection. He's a beast at getting after the quarterback and stopping the run, but in pass coverage is a little bit suspect. So the way that this last year ended by losing to the Rams the way they did at home, I know there are no fans and that has an impact, but to get your asses kicked like that by your rival, it stings, man. It stings. So this is a pivotal year, especially with all this Wilson drama in the offseason. This feels like a make or break year.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and get to my guy Russie, man. Mookie. Russie joined the team, from what I understand, the last week of OTAs, and in his presser, he acknowledged that, there was some frustrations for sure after the season. And I guess in a general aspect, where do you think the current relationship status stands between Russ and Seattle? Where did the frustrations even begin with? So we all know, but then where do you think it stands?
Well, I think one of the big things entering last season was the whole let Russ cook slogan, which was to stop doing the Pete Carroll run the ball a lot, have Wilson only throw 20 some odd times a game, maybe low 30s. Stop letting the run game be the focal point of the offense and let Russell Wilson, who's been an absolutely phenomenal quarterback his entire career, let him be the guy to lead the way offensively. And it was going pretty well those first several weeks, but in hindsight, they were playing a bad New England defense, a bad Dallas defense. Sorry, Nick, but it's true. They're playing terrible teams. Yeah, they just weren't covering anybody. But it was still it probably caught the league off guard. Like, wow, Seattle's a pass-first offense. They got all these weapons. This is going to be hard to stop. And then suddenly, it became a lot easier to stop. The Giants shut the team down. Washington, I think, held them to 20 points. Even in their wins, they weren't impressing all that much, and the offense was looking out of sync. They were running the ball a little bit more, and Pete Carroll kind of admitted that he interfered in the offense. He didn't specify how much he did, but he interfered with the offense in a way that might have upset Wilson. Like, you're kind of taking the ball out of my hands here, and I'm the franchise quarterback. So with all the trade rumors and this and that, I think the current relationship is smoothed over from now. I genuinely believe there was some rift between Wilson and Carroll, or maybe the front office as a whole. Saying, from Wilson's side of things, it's like the offensive line, we know, train wreck for the longest time. Although felt like last year was not the best year to complain about the O-line because I didn't think they were all that bad. They just had some injuries, but still, we've seen some of their offensive lines over the years, and you're wondering how Wilson is alive at this point. But it's a smooth over relationship, but the bumpy roads are ahead in the sense that suppose the Seahawks don't have a good season. Suppose they miss the playoffs entirely, and we're not going to, we'll exempt Wilson getting injured or all of the guys getting injured, all the key players getting injured like the 49ers last season. If they underachieve, miss the playoffs, something of that nature, I cannot envision a world where all three guys, meaning Carroll, Schneider, and Wilson, all of them are still on the Seahawks next year. In other words, at least one of those three is gone. I'd rather, if it were up to me and any fan base, you're choosing the player over the coach, and especially when your coach is the oldest one in the league.
I was literally about to ask you about you kind of answered it already, and fellas, I want to get y'all head on this one, see where y'all head is at. I feel like this year because of the known frustration that did exist with Russ and the Seahawks, right? I feel like this year kind of is the prove it year, quote unquote. It's like we're going to see how things go this year. It's water under the bridge for now, but we will have to circle back to this. And you kind of answered it, like somebody may have to go if things don't work out. Mookie, Nick, Rye, where are y'all heads at with Russie, man? Like, do y'all think this is a year where it's not a lot of things are on the line. Everything is on the line this year with Seattle and Russ. Where y'all heads at with that? It don't matter who answer first.
Go ahead, man.
Great question. It kind of brings you back to what we talked about last week with Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, who's more in the hot seat. I believe you keep Russie. Pete Carroll he's a good coach, but he's also had great players when they were good. Now he has to do a little bit more coaching. It's not really working out as well. And you're taking the ball to the best player in Rusty. So I feel like, you got to keep the boy. It's hard to find a good quarterback. You have no options coming up next year in the draft at all. At all. So I would say you keep Rusty, you let go Pete, and just go forward with that. He's the better option right now. You can find a good coach, kind of, sort of. You can find an RA, but you can find a better coach.
Like it's easy.
You can find a better option than Pete Carroll right now. I just feel like he's not what he used to be, I guess. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have that locker room like he used to have it back then.
I think it's Russell. You keep Russell, and that's by a long shot. I don't think it's even close. I think Mookie can attest to that as well because, me thinking about listening to Nick talking about Pete Carroll losing the locker room, it still likens me back to when, that Super Bowl call and they didn't get the ball. And they didn't get the ball to Marshawn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was going to ask Mookie about that. Like, how does that still, how is that translating now? Is that still even in the air? Like, do people even still think about that in Seattle? Like, how does what comes about with that at all, if any?
Well, it's a yard away from presumably winning the Super Bowl again because, with Tom Brady, I need to see triple zeros on the clock before I doubt him on a game-winning drive. But
For sure.
It was frustrating on a couple of fronts because, one, I'm one of the few who thinks that passing the ball was not a terrible idea, but I absolutely hated the call, specifically the play design. Why were we going to throw a slant pass, which is not one of Wilson's strengths, to the number 4 receiver on the roster? Like, could you imagine the Patriots in that same situation? They're going to Gronk. They're not going to go to the number 4, number 5 guy. There's no element of surprise here. So, historically with the Seahawks, so even Marshawn Lynch has not been all that great in short yardage. And that's clearly less to do with beast mode and more to do with Seattle's blocking. And I use the air quotes. Hopefully the camera caught that.
Yeah, we got it.
But I think, there is some bitterness over how that game ended. And certainly Sherman was the most bitter about it because we saw some of the storylines about him and Darrell Bevel clashing over, short yardage play calls and some of the stuff that went on in training camp. But I think as time has moved on, it's less in our minds. But if Seattle had won that Super Bowl, 2 rings is really hard to do, even with a franchise quarterback, even a future Hall of Famer. Even the absolute best quarterbacks of all time, very rarely do you have that many dudes win multiple rings. There are only a certain number of quarterbacks, maybe 15 or 20, who are actually important to their team's success, who have got 2 rings. So you get 2 rings. I don't think we're in this situation. Because you could say, hey, we got 2 championships instead of we got that 1 championship, but we were so close to that 2nd championship. We haven't been close since then. So I don't think Pete Carroll has lost the locker room as of late, especially with so much turnover. But what he has lost is, I think, his ability to build up great talent from like the 7th round and undrafted free agents. Like, you could still do that. Mm-hmm. Chris Carson's a 7th round draft pick. We've got some guys starting in the secondary and then the defensive line who are undrafted or like day 3 draft picks. So he can still find some hidden gems, but instead of building the whole roster out of these guys who are like later draft picks on the cheap for your salary cap, they're having to make these splash moves like trade for Jamal Adams. And, they don't have that same cap situation because they've also paid Russell Wilson. So you got to adjust your whole mindset, your mentality, your approach to building a team, because when Pete Carroll got hired by the Seahawks, it was a trash roster. I mean, just one of the worst rosters in the league. That's why they had to do so much changing around, and they traded for Marshawn midseason, this and that. But they went from building from the ground up to, okay, we've already got a franchise quarterback. We got a lot of good players. It's harder to me to maintain a contender than to build from scratch and create a contender. So I think that's where Carroll and Schneider are in a tough spot right now, because the drafting as of late, although I think last year's draft class figures to be quite good, it's just not been the same. They're not hitting all those home runs where you get Earl Thomas and Golden Tate and Russell Okung in the same class, or Sherman and Wagner. No, not Sherman and Wagner weren't the same class. It was KJ Wright and Sherman in the same class. And then you had Wilson and Wagner in the 2012 class. I mean, that's legendary drafting.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that's another really good point when you talked about the late round draft picks, and in my opinion, I feel like that's kind of where they kind of reached the standstill, in the sense of Seattle did really good in their drafts. They found the right players at the right time. They were able to have a solid, with the same players, they were able to have like a solid 5-year run. But eventually, people move on for X amount of reasons. There was unforeseen injury with Cam, and the other Cliff Averill. There was unforeseen injuries. Like, you don't see career-ending injuries just happening out of the blue, so that kind of hurts you too. But then you're hoping to hit on these guys again in terms of hitting late round draft picks, and it just doesn't always work out like that, because in itself the draft is a crapshoot. So now you're in that situation where you kind of have to look for those known quantities or known players, and that's where the Jamal Adams comes in, and you're hoping it works, right? Who else did they? I think they signed Jadeveon too. Within that time frame, that time period, Jadeveon, they signed him. And then it was the tackle, from Houston. Yes.
Houston, yeah.
Yeah. So like, you're making these moves, and I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but I think it does have an impact, knowing that you're not going to be able to hit on the draft picks all the time, so you have to try and find ways to keep your team afloat with Russell Wilson still at your quarterback position. And at the time, I think you still had Doug Baldwin before he ends up retiring. Like, you have to try and have these things together. So I think y'all were in the same boat as the Rams in a sense, like just trying to stay afloat, trading for guys, but also like getting these known quantities, hoping to compete for a Super Bowl each year. Am I kind of off base, or is that kind of something similar as well, like what was going on?
Well, I think the Rams, they're in a different situation because Jared Goff was average at best, and I think Sean McVay's system made him a lot better than he actually was. I think Matthew Stafford is clearly a better quarterback than Jared Goff, so they might be one of those teams that is like truly a better quarterback away from making a Super Bowl run again, because they made the Super Bowl with Goff. But in Seattle's situation, see, they're not like other teams that like to splash tons of money in free agency. That's just not how they roll. They like to sign guys on 1 or 2 year contracts and prove it deals, so to speak. Get them on the cheap and hope that they can make significant contributions towards a deep playoff run. And I think it's had its pluses and minuses. And the minuses have been the fact that some of these signings have just not worked out. I mean, the Clowney trade, I don't think it necessarily worked out. I like that he got close to the quarterback, but to me, a great pass rusher actually sacks the quarterback consistently. He got 3.5 sacks in 1 year. And he had no sacks in Tennessee last year. So I know.
Ryan, what you think about your boy Clowney?
I have no worries for the Clowney, man. A waste of time and money. I mean, I really have no worries. I can talk all day, but I really won't do it today. I'm not gonna do it.
Bro, I thought you said he was good at stopping the run, bro. I thought you said he was good at the edge.
Hey, so do a lot of people, man. Game tapes said otherwise.
They told me he good at stopping the run. He ain't doing nothing.
Mookie can attest. He was balling. Was he not balling out in Seattle, Mookie?
Well, he was balling in the run defense and a kind of a liability at times in pass rush, because you might be getting double teamed a bunch because Seattle's pass rush isn't all that good. But again, 3.5 sacks is 3.5 sacks, and I can't call him one of the best pass rushers in the league if he's going to have that, very little productivity in terms of sacks and overall quarterback pressures.
What probably is making me believe that Jadeveon had such a good season in Seattle is because he had like splash games, like that game against San Francisco. I think it might have been a primetime game. He was just disrupting that whole entire game, and that was one of the things that just came to my mind. But he got. I wish we got that from Jadavion. At least a game I could think about from Tennessee that he showed out. At least made a game worth the money that we paid him to do nothing and to get injured and don't even play in the playoffs. I just zero sacks.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like red and white in that game against the Niners. I mean, he was so dominant, but those games were few and far between. So, you look at Seattle's recent big splash moves. Quandre Diggs is not a big splash move, but he's the other safety.
I like him.
Of course, we gave up two first rounders for Jamal Adams. And the reason why they had to go for those dudes, because historically speaking, the Seahawks like to, as I've mentioned before, kind of build, have homegrown players. So like you sign these undrafted free agents out of college, or get these 6th or 7th round rookies and then turn them into starters. But what's been the failure is that the post Legion of Boom, like Earl Thomas's direct replacement was Tedrick Thompson. And the less said about him, the better, because the number of times he would miss tackles, flail at the ball and not get it. I mean, he thinks he's got a 90-inch vertical. But that was such a total bust of a draft pick. And that's part of why they went and got Diggs in the middle of the 2019 season. And Quandre's been awesome. Jamal Adams, I think, was in part to fix the lack of a pass rush and to have sort of that, multi-positional talent that you can move around all over the place. But still, McDougal and Thompson, Bradley McDougal was an all right player. I still miss him, but he was terrible on the Jets. So you look at what Seattle has worked with, and you realize the talent gap has considerably lowered. The talent quality of the roster has considerably lowered from the Super Bowl years. So it's hard to make a serious Super Bowl run. You don't have this abundance of talent coming through. And I think they found out the hard way with their pass rush, because 2 years ago, as part of that Clowney trade I mentioned, they had nobody else of note contributing. So now you got Carlos Dunlap, you've got Benson Mayowa, you've got Alton Robinson, the rookie. So you're getting some guys who are able to be some level of effective on the defensive side of the ball. But ultimately, one of the things for the Seahawks to me is they have some weaknesses that didn't used to be there 6-7 years ago. So we'll see how it all plays out this season. But if this doesn't work out and they have another disappointing year where they don't win a playoff game, I can see some major changes being made in the front office or on the roster, because it's not like Seattle's in a great cap situation and they got a lot of expiring contracts.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned about this roster talent that Seattle is they don't have what they used to have. And now we got a guy who joined. I'm gonna call him Johnny V because I don't want to mess up your last name, but Johnny V.
Hey, not a problem.
Hey, Johnny V didn't check them, man, and he covers the Arizona Cardinals for SB Nation as well. And first off, before we even get into the Cardinals, right quick, Johnny, how are you feeling today, boss man? You good?
I'm good, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm a little bit tardy. Had a work call wrap up late, but it's good to join you guys. And yeah, I'm doing well, all things considered. Cardinals are picked to finish 4th. General consensus around just about every league insider. So, that's exactly what should happen. Year 3 of a rebuild, right?
I possibly. We know a little bit about a rebuild over here in Washington. We've been saying it for 30 years. So we're in the same boat. but let's talk about your guy Kliff Kingsbury in Arizona. You mentioned the rebuild part, and we also know about the talent that was acquired this offseason, and that's just been kind of building over the last couple of years. What is the consensus, or what is the progress report on Kliff Kingsbury? Where is the community at? Where are you at in terms of how he's trying to get things going over there? I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know about Kliff. I don't.
Yeah.
He just doesn't strike me as an NFL coach. I think it was a move to kind of reflect or mirror Sean McVay. In a sense, like when that fad was going on, the same thing would happen in Green Bay when they hired their guy. I'm not saying that they aren't qualified. I'm just saying I feel like that was kind of a mirror move. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I'll give you the floor. Where is your head at with Kliff Kingsbury and stuff?
Yeah, I think your synopsis is the shared by, I would say, 75% of the casual fan base of other teams and the national media. It's difficult. The Cardinals went through 3 coaches in 3 years. They had Bruce Arians retire. Then they brought in Steve Wilkes and, in my opinion, didn't give him a whole lot of talent to work with, saddled him with Josh Rosen. He was fairly or unfairly outed after 1 year, and they immediately pivoted, right? Wilkes was this very defensive-heavy head coach, and so they said, okay, our offensive numbers were so poor in 2018. We're going to flip the script. We're going to go all offense this offseason. And what they do, they hired the exact opposite of Steve Wilkes, a young offensive, head coach, coordinator, whatever you want to call him, and Kliff Kingsbury, who had just been fired by his alma mater in Texas Tech. He was supposed to be the USC offensive coordinator, if you remember, and ended up just backing out of that to become the Cardinal head coach. And the Cardinals had a vision in mind. They said, okay, Kliff, all you have to do is elevate the offense. The offense in 2018, fair or not, with Wilkes and Rosen, was statistically the worst offense in the NFL the last 20 years. Advanced metrics, everything supports that. And so they bring in Kliff Kingsbury. They're in a complete rebuild. They know they're going to take Kyler Murray. They said, Kliff, you elevate Kyler. We'll piecemeal the defense with you. We'll bring in Vance Joseph. He had no NFL contacts. They had the general manager, Steve Keim, had to hire all of his defensive assistants. And I'll give Kliff credit his first year in a very competitive, difficult division with a team that went to the Super Bowl within his division. They went 5-11 and were very competitive. The offense with generally almost the same exact parts outside of a midseason trade. This is in 2019 for Kenyon Drake. This is the same team. But of course, you insert, the explosive electric Kyler Murray. Kliff did not embarrass himself his first year, especially when you compare him to guys like Zach Taylor. So I think a lot of us were cautiously optimistic coming into last season. Then they get off to that fast start. The Hail Murray, they're 6-2, 6-3. They're really kind of the darlings of the NFL. And then what happened? They started 2-0 in the division. The wheels fell off. They finished 0-4. Listen, they've never, Wilkes, Arians, and now Kingsbury, they've never beaten Sean McVay. Sean McVay's been brought in as the head coach of the LA Rams. They're 0-4 against them. That's and crazy. Typically they lose. They lose in embarrassing fashion, right? So that's one thing. Russell Wilson's missed the postseason one time in his career. He and Pete Carroll going into the Hall of Fame. I think it's unfortunate for Kliff because I don't think he's as bad as perception is. I mean, he could be Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett went to the postseason, a handful amount of times, was allowed to grow as a head coach. You don't have that luxury in this division with 3 coaches that most people think the general consensus. And I like Kyle Shanahan. I don't think he's elite. I don't put him in the same category as McVay and Carroll, but it's clearly he's much better than Kliff. When you're rolling into the season and the consensus is you have the 4th best head coach in your division, that it's going to be difficult. As loaded as a lot of people think this Cardinal team may be this year, I think that's the reason so many people are just writing them off, especially last year. They were the benefactor of playing a lot of backup quarterbacks. The fact that they fell apart on national TV in week 16 and 17, losing to backup quarterbacks with the playoffs on the line. I mean, really, last year was their year to make the postseason. They got to play the NFC East.
I thought so.
They got to play the AFC East. They got a Niner team in week 16. Remember that game was on Amazon Prime on a Saturday night, and C.J. Beathard was playing. They had nothing to play for, and they got steamrolled. And then, of course, they lost week 17 to the the LA Rams. So I think the perception of Kliff is he's okay. He was probably given this job as a reactionary move, but I would caution some people on that just because think about where this team was transitioning from Wilkes to Kingsbury. The roster was at that point, the general manager should have been fired as well. Steve Keim should have been fired. They should have cleaned house, started over, got a new regime. So if you're a head coaching candidate, somebody who do you want to saddle your reputation to somebody like Steve Keim and a roster that looked like an expansion level roster before Kyler Murray got there? And the Arizona Cardinals are not the Packers. They're not the Steelers. The Cardinals were trying to hedge their bet with Kliff and where the league was going with offensive innovation. And I commend them for that. They had the Cardinals are not a big time NFL brand. That goes without saying. So they have to hedge their bet when they hire coaches. because if Kliff Kingsbury would have exploded at USC that next year and gotten NFL interviews, and he does have contacts in the NFL, he knows Bill Belichick, he knows McVay. McVay and he coincidentally are very close. He would not have given the Cardinals the time of day. So I think they thought to themselves, okay, we're going to buy low with the hope that, he takes off. And so, just to recap, I don't think that he's as bad as people think. I just think that the NFC West is maybe the most talented division, both with coaches and personnel, that we've seen in 10, 15 years. It's a bad time for him to be a coach in the division.
So let me ask you, because I get it. And what you're saying is important in terms of just being cautious and holding steady with Kliff. And in your personal opinion to this point, if you had to give a percentage just on your opinion, what's the stamp of approval? Is this above 50%? Is he in favor, or is this something where it's like you just need to see a little bit more?
I think they will move off of him if they do not make the playoffs, and if they have a winning record and miss the playoffs. I don't even know if that's possible now with 7 playoff teams. That I think if they miss the postseason this year, they will fire he and general manager Steve Keim, partially because of the pressure that Michael Bidwell, the owner, will face from Kyler Murray, who has done his job. I mean, he put up a season last year. His numbers were unlike anything Cardinal fans have ever seen. Total yards rushing, throwing the football, total touchdowns. If Kyler emulates that, and we think a lot of people builds on that this year, and they still don't make the playoffs, they're going to have to go out and pivot and get a big-time head coach that's going to want to work with Kyler, that Kyler has respect for. Because Cardinal fans hate me for saying this. He has an ace up his sleeve with the fact that everything you hear and read, just look at every time there's an article about baseball, about I need to win. Yeah. I'm addicted to the postseason. I've never lost in my life. And it's true. I mean, he lost one game. I don't think he lost it all in high school. He lost, 2 games at Oklahoma or whatever it was. And now he's saddled with a franchise that has the longest championship drought in all professional sports. So I think that they're going to have to go out. I mean, I would not be surprised if they cleaned house. Michael Bidwell put his arm around Kyler and say, you're going to be a part of the coaching interviews, because they're going to write him a check for whatever he wants. And give Kyler credit. That's not where his mind is right now. He wants to compete for championships. His bar is here. The Cardinal organization, we'll see. So I think that if Kliff does not make the postseason, they finish 4th in the division, I think they'll clean house and they'll appease Kyler and try to find. I mean, it would not surprise me if they went out, and I know this is crazy to speculate even before the season starts, and go out and get, the Philadelphia coach that was fired last year, somebody who's been to the Super Bowl before. Yeah, Doug Peterson, somebody like that, I think is what they'll target if they move off Kliff.
So let me ask you. This is gonna be a kind of a roundtable of sorts. So I'm gonna go to everybody here. But John, I'm gonna start with you. Where do you think Arizona? Obviously, you guys acquired AJ Green. There was somebody else at the top of my head that I just
JJ Watt.
I'm about to say I incredibly forgot. Yes, JJ Watt.
Forget him?
Yes, exactly. I don't know how, but JJ Watt and a couple of other people, right? But you guys gotten some help for Kyler and just helping to bolster up that defense too. Now I understand Chandler may be on. It's a rumor, I guess, but Chandler may be on the trading block. You can, if you want to elaborate on that, you can. But my question to you is, where do you think your talent just stacks up in the division? Is this a 4th place roster, or is this like a coaching thing that kind of puts them in 4th place projection wise? Like, where do you think they stack up in the division?
Objectively speaking, I think it's a playoff level roster. I think it was a playoff level roster last year, and they solidified the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I think that the best acquisition they made this offseason with respect to Watt is they acquired Rodney Hudson, a top 3 center in the NFL. Nobody talks about that move. It was in the height of free agency. They had one of the worst graded centers in Pro Football Focus last year. Now they get Hudson, who he's not an Aaron Donald eraser, but that will help in terms of the interior pressure that Kyler faces. And listen, they've drafted or used a 2nd-round pick on a wide receiver for 4 consecutive off seasons. They bring in Rondell Moore. They're going to see what AJ Green has left. They still have Christian Kirk. They added James Conner, who I like, to go with Chase Edmonds. I think the offensive line is underrated. Defensively, they've drafted 2 high-impact inside linebackers the past 2 years with Xavier Collins and Isaiah Simmons. Everybody's waiting for those guys to pop. They've invested. I mean, I said this right when I came on, but this is year 3 of a rebuild with a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. Like, this is when the roster should look the part, right? You should be able to go and splurge a little bit in free agency and otherwise. So I think I would probably say it's a top 12 roster. And I think that they've got the second best quarterback in the division. And you could argue with me on Stafford right now, but I just think Kyler's a better player right now versus, Russ. But their coach, I mean, at the end of the day, the division is so stacked. It really comes down to who's running the show on the sideline. Yeah. And there's such a disadvantage there. And I think that Vance Joseph, he gets a lot of heat from Cardinal fans. He did an admirable job last year. They did not miss the playoffs because of their defense. Their defense played well, especially in the second half of the season. They were 4th in sacks. You mentioned Chandler Jones. He didn't play last year for the most part. Now, I do think that the trade speculation, I don't think the Cardinals, with so much on the line this year, and the ownership in the front office knows it, that they're going to risk Chandler Jones not playing football for them this year. So I could see them doing a short-term upper of guarantees to keep him happy. But I do think there's some speculation on their end. Didn't play last year. Let's see what he has left in the tank. His contract expires, but he's not going anywhere. They need to win. They can't be trading away Chandler Jones.
And Mookie. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I just had a question about Cardinals because you mentioned that Chandler Jones may not be coming back, and I know you all did not re-sign Hassan Reddick, correct?
No, they
like Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And they let him walk for. I mean, he got another 1 year prove-it deal, and that's somebody that I would have liked to have seen them brought back. He only $8 million or something.
Yeah. Okay. And I had also wanted to know if you could tell me about Isaiah Simmons, because for a lot of reasons, he's one of the players that I was looking at last year, because he's one of the higher draft picks. He was talked about throughout the whole draft process as being like one of these generational type of linebackers. But for whatever reason, every time I cut the game, I didn't see him on the field a lot, and I did not understand why. I've been trying to find reasons online, maybe something I could read to tell me why he wasn't playing, but I was just asking, maybe you could.
Hey, that's why we got Johnny V here. Johnny V's gonna break it down.
I can give you the definitive. So if they told you behind closed doors, they mishandled his development. And I think, not to make excuses for Isaiah coming from Clemson, where he was a jack of all trades, playing safety, playing edge rusher, playing inside backer, playing corner, he needed a rookie minicamp, because they brought him in, and Vance Joseph, who I just got done complimenting, said, you're going to be a 3-down inside linebacker. And they did everything virtual. They had not met with him. So they met him at the combine, at the whiteboard in February of 2020, right? They did not get their hands on him again until August of last year, or late July, or whatever it was. So he was so behind the 8 ball in terms of his development. And then they had 2 veterans in Jordan Hicks and Devondre Campbell in-house that could call the defense, that knew, covered schemes and where to position the rest of the defense. But there was no question, anybody with eyeballs who watched him last year, he was their most talented, their best inside backer. They put him in the game. I mean, Mookie can attest to this, that interception of Russell Wilson in overtime in Arizona on Sunday Night Football. I mean, he is a gazelle of a human being. 6'5". He might be the fastest player on their defense outside of maybe Budda Baker or Byron Murphy. I think that they were week 1 last year against San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan schemed up a play and got Raheem Mostert on a slant route and took advantage of Simmons' inexperience. And for whatever reason, they were like, nope, we gotta rein this in. We can't let him go through his rookie mistakes. But every time he was on the field, he would pop. He'd force a turnover. He'd have a tackle for loss. He was their highest rated PFF inside linebacker by a wide margin. I mean, even in limited snaps, he probably played roughly 55% of the time last year, which is embarrassing for the team. He still made the all-rookie team. And they know that they made a mistake. Number one is they shipped out Devondre Campbell. They let Devondre Campbell walk, ate some money. They said, Simmons is our guy. By all accounts, he's looked phenomenal this preseason. And then they take Xavier Collins, and what did they do? Immediately on draft night, they said, oh, Xavier Collins is a starter. with all due respect to Jordan Hicks, who's still on the roster and due, $10 million this year. So they know that they fudged that up last year, but I think I'll give them one pass is because navigating the COVID offseason really hurt. I mean, Simmons, I think, would have been in contention. He wouldn't have won it because the kid out of Washington was incredible, but he would have been in contention for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
So, Mookie, where are you at with Seattle in terms of how they stack up talent-wise in the division? Obviously, Johnny said, he feels like Arizona's a top 12 roster. What about Seattle? How do you all stack up in the division? And how do you think y'all stack up generally speaking as well?
It's a fascinating question that I'm not sure I have a concrete answer for, because I think they got the best quarterback clearly. But in terms of roster strength, I don't think they got a deeper roster than San Francisco. The Rams, it could be close, but the Rams have just got a sick wide receiver group. It's fascinating how the entire NFC West is just loading up on receivers this whole offseason, and that's without trying to acquire a big name in free agency. Of course, Arizona last year got DeAndre Hopkins for a bag of chips, and David Johnson, and I'm forever mad at Bill O'Brien for that. But, Arizona got Rondale Moore. Seattle got Dwayne Eskridge in the second round. It's a minor surprise, but I think even with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, drafting a receiver early was a justified decision, because by losing David Moore to Carolina, their receiving core was pretty thin. And to me, especially with the new offense, you got a new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, from that Sean McVay system. He's not going to be a carbon copy of the Rams offense. He'll have his own ideas in mind, but some of it. If you're going to have a pass-first offense, I think you need to design your offense to be pass-first proactively and not just pass-first for the sake of it. You have to design your offense as such that it's meant to be a pass-first offense. So for Seattle, I think they got somewhere between either the second or third best roster in the division, but Russell Wilson elevates it by being such a tremendous quarterback. Wide receiver, this is as comfortable as I felt about the receiver position since the Golden Tate, Doug Baldwin, Sidney Rice, Jermaine Kearse years. But Russell Wilson, I think, was arguably a worse passer then. He was very much, as soon as his first read is covered, he wants to scramble. But now he goes through his progression so much better, and it makes the receivers better as well. So you've got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Dwayne Eskridge, hopefully can contribute. I like Freddie Swain and what he showed as a rookie last year in limited snaps. Running back, that's a question mark, because Chris Carson is a fantastic running back to me. Not one of the top two or top three. He's not at Derrick Henry's level, but he's a punishing runner. I think he's a better receiving back than given credit for. But below that, absolutely nobody on that roster is guaranteed a spot. Not Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, Josh Johnson, or Rashad Penny. And Rashad Penny, Seattle spent a first-round pick on him and got widely ridiculed for that. And not only has it not worked out because of injury mostly, but also because Nick Chubb got taken by Cleveland a few picks later. And I think Nick Chubb would have been the ideal Seahawks running back more so than Rashad Penny. But that's another discussion. Offensive line, as much as I've trashed the offensive line for years, I think Seattle fans can be comfortable with Dwayne Brown at left tackle, albeit up there in age. But, Andrew Whitworth's 85 years old, and he's still playing at a high level for the Rams. You got Dwayne Brown at left tackle. You've got Brandon Shell at right tackle. Damian Lewis was not first team all rookie. He was on the PFWA's all rookie team, starting at right guard. He even played a game at center. They're moving him to left guard. You acquire Gabe Jackson. I wanted Rodney Hudson. Unfortunately, he went to Arizona. But getting Gabe Jackson, not a bad deal at all. He's a really good guard. I'm pretty sure PFF, and you can interpret PFF grades however you want, but he seems to grade well as both a pass blocker and run blocker. And for Seattle, it's important that they have a good pass blocking line. They've been getting away with too much of run block first and then pass block second, and I think they've finally seen the light there. Where I have concerns for the roster, why I don't put them in like San Francisco's league in terms of overall roster quality, is the depth issues at both cornerback and at linebacker, because it doesn't look like they're re-signing KJ Wright. In fact, KJ Wright's still a free agent.
Yes.
And that is sad.
Unbelievable.
Off-ball linebackers, guys who do not rush the passer at that position in a 4-3 defense, there's just no market value for them. They're like barely above running backs at this point. It's sad because KJ is I use this comparison a lot. If Bobby Wagner is Seattle's Brian Urlacher, KJ Wright is Seattle's Lance. KJ Wright is Seattle's Lance Briggs, and I really hope that they bring KJ back, but it's not looking likely. So you still have Wagner, Cody Barton. Oh man, he's a great special teams player, but the few starts that he had before Jordan Brooks got to be in the starting lineup, he looked out of his depth playing on defense. So then you have Jordan Brooks, first round pick of 2020. Really promising first season, especially towards the later end of the year. But after that, there's just very little proven depth. Ben Burke-Irvin, special teamer. Aaron Donker is from Germany, and he's one of those international players. Then you got a couple undrafted free agents. So you got Darrell Taylor likely moving from defensive end to linebacker as well. So they're having to piece together a proper linebacking core. And then in the secondary, I'm comfortable, of course, with Adams and Diggs. That's a very good city duo. And hopefully the improvements on the defensive line will discourage Ken Norton Jr. from blitzing Jamal Adams as much as they had to do last year. But the secondary at outside corner, big question marks because they did not resign Shaquille Griffin in free agency. He went to Jacksonville. Pretty much anybody who was affiliated with the Seahawks who left Seattle went to Jacksonville or Carolina, it seemed. But Trey Flowers, very inconsistent when he started. He is probably on the bubble as a roster player. Then you have Demarius Randall converting from safety to corner. DJ Reed was a revelation because Seattle, in the early Legion of Boom days, they loved their corners to be 6'1", 6'3", punishing physical corners who could run with the best of them. But DJ Reed's 5'9", and he was arguably out of position because he could have been starting as a slot corner. Ugo Amadi, same situation, slot corner really. He can play safety, but he's 5'9", and he's not the greatest athlete. So I think Seattle's good at slot corner, but that most of football's played on the outside. And to have Akella Witherspoon, formerly of the 49ers, and a rookie, Trey Brown, as your presumptive favorites to start, maybe DJ Reed, it doesn't give you a fuzzy feeling inside. Like this defense could be a liability again. Now, they finished reasonably well last year, but you got to consider the strength of schedule. If Arizona was beating a lot of teams with backup quarterbacks, so was Seattle. I mean, the improvements for Seattle's defense came against C.J. Beathard, Carson Wentz, who played like a backup, Colt McCoy in a game that they lost, Dwayne Haskins, who got waived like 2 weeks after that. So I think there was a lot of paper over the cracks. I think there were a lot of deceptive games from the Seahawks defense. I thought Ken Norton Jr. should have been fired just for how poorly they played, especially in that Buffalo game where everybody was wide open and Josh Allen looked like the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah, I lost money on that game, so he owed me some money.
You lost money, I lost my mind. That was my birthday weekend, and they got absolutely railroaded.
Oh, man.
But still, Seattle's roster is not what it used to be, and we've gone through this. But where their biggest strength is, outside of course, Russell Wilson and then the wide receivers and Chris Carson, is their special teams. Michael Dixon, phenomenal punter, one of the best in the league. They just signed him to a big contract extension. Jason Myers did not miss a single field goal last year, which is a good and bad thing. The good is that he can make those kicks, unlike Blair Walsh. I don't want to go through that experience again. The bad thing is Pete Carroll's tendency to be conservative on fourth down and go for a field goal instead of try and get a yard could only encourage him to say, Jason Myers is an automatic 3 points. We don't need to risk turning the ball over on downs. I'd rather not do that. But their special teams by advanced metrics was top 5 in the league. And that to me was a major reason why they finished 12-4. I expect the special teams to still be good this year. But yeah, I think Seattle's roster is in the middle of the pack of the NFC West. They just have the best quarterback. But the NFC West is so stacked. Like I think Arizona probably has the 4th best roster, and yet they could, with this new expanded playoff, the extra wild card, it is mathematically possible for every team in the division to qualify. So Arizona is still very much a dangerous team. And I say that not just because Johnny V is here, but also because every time Seattle plays at Arizona, one of two things happens. They lose in Arizona, or more likely, they suffer a season-ending injury to a key player. But the Cardinals, I think it is coaching that holds them back a bit. Kliff Kingsbury is inexperienced. But to me, I find Kyler Murray to be exciting and the Cardinals' offense to be boring. They're just way too much horizontal passing and not utilizing Kyler Murray.
Mookie gets it. He understands.
Yeah. I mean, we watched, of course, being out here, get a lot of Cardinals games. So it just is a head scratcher. And I also find that Kingsbury is a lot more conservative in his decision making than he should be, which I think one of the bigger pictures for NFL head coaches is that we assume that younger head coaches are going to be more aggressive. They have the data, they have the analytics to suggest go for it on fourth down more, pass the ball more. Don't settle for field goals if you don't have to. But Kingsbury very often, especially in that Miami game last year, it's a terrible decision to kick a field goal instead of going for it on 4th and 1. And you could have run the clock out. They miss. Miami gets the game-winning field goal instead, or I think they missed a tying field goal rather.
Yeah.
And you end up with Miami running out the clock. But whatever the case, the NFC West is going to be a dogfight. San Francisco can still be a competitive team, even with Garoppolo at quarterback, because much like with Sean McVay in Los Angeles, Kyle Shanahan has built an offensive system where even the absolute worst quarterbacks can look good for a day, whether it's Beathard or who's the other dude, Mullins? Yeah, Nick Mullins can look competent for a day. And that's the same applies for the running backs. They got like 85 running backs on their roster, and they all look like they can bust 100 or 200 yards a game. So Garoppolo is a liability. He's what's going to hold them back from a Super Bowl. But as long as they don't have like this storm of injuries like last year, they could very well make a playoff run as well, because they should still have an elite defense, a high-level running game. They got arguably the best tight end in the game in Kittle. So it's really hard to forecast how this whole division race is going to play out, because the best roster doesn't have the best quarterback. A middling roster has got the best quarterback in the division. And certainly the most exciting quarterback doesn't really have the greatest coach in the division. So everything is up for grabs. And I can't wait for it. And at the same time, I'm terrified, because those division games are just going to be so pivotal. And I'd rather be in the AFC East.
This is honestly my favorite division. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. NFC West, those games, and at one point the AFC North, but I think the NFC West took over, just off the talent in general, and then also watching the San Francisco and Seattle matchup for years. It just stuck with me. And Nick and Rob, before we close this one out, what are y'all opinion? I mean, obviously we got the experts here for a reason, the subject matter experts. But where are y'all at with the division in general? Like, where does each team stack up? I mean, you don't have to talk too much into detail, but where does each team stack up in y'all opinion?
Well, we did a topic, a couple of shows ago about who we thought was the best division in the league, and my answer, of course, was NFC West. As far as, I mean, I don't know if you're asking me who I think would win the division, but I think it will be like Tony B and Mookie was saying, like one of the most entertaining divisions to watch this year, because so many tough matchups. It's hard to really call it. I guess if I were a betting man, I would guess I would lean toward the Rams. If but I don't, it's hard for me to even say that. It's tough for me to say that, because it's such a tough division to look forward to. But yeah, I'm excited this year, man. Like Mookie said, man, I wish the season was starting next week. I can't wait.
I'll tell you one thing. It ain't gonna be the Niners. I can't trust any team led by that man Garoppolo. I can't do it. It's coming down to 3 teams for me, man. I'll tell you that. Nick, where your head at?
I'm liking the Rams. Hot take. I do believe the Seahawks might finish 4th in the division. Just like Mookie said, they're one injury away from rushing from being 0-17 team. Like, it's nobody in that roster.
Oh, damn.
He said it. He said he elevates that team to what they were last year. He did. I feel like if teams could somehow not neutralize him, but put it all on him, or like anything goes wrong with him, I feel like they're at the bottom of the list. I do think the Cardinals will surprise some people. I think Lincoln will have his offseason to, see what he did wrong and try to correct some mistakes. My only downfall on San Fran is Jimmy Garoppolo and losing Robert Saleh. So I would have to go with the Rams, only because of Sean McVay and Matt Stafford. But if that defense can play anywhere remotely near what they were 2 years ago, and San Fran, I think they have a good chance to win the division as well. But I do think Seahawks miss the playoffs and somebody goes missing next offseason.
Quick question for Mookie, real quick. I mean, I apologize if you've already answered this question, but what do you feel like is your overall outtake of what the after all the moves you all made on defense? Like, do you think that you all can be formidable enough to get enough stops to put the offense back on the field to do what they need to do? Like, or do you feel like the adjustments still have not been made on that side of the ball?
On the defensive side of the ball, you're talking. Well, first of all,
Yeah.
Nick said if Seattle misses the playoffs, somebody goes missing. It sounds like there's going to be a mafia hit on somebody, on Carroll or Snyder. I don't think we want that to happen. No Tommy from Goodfellas. But
Nick he don't mean no harm. You know what I'm saying? He kind of says things. It don't mean nothing.
Yeah. So the Seahawks of today compared to the Seahawks of 2012 is that if Russell Wilson, for whatever reason, had gotten injured in those 2012, 2014 years, those first 3 seasons in the league, Seattle could have coped with their backup quarterback playing. I guess it was a mixture of Matt Flynn and Tavares Jackson at the time, and still churned out a competitive roster, a competitive, slate of games, and maybe even finished 500 or something. I mean, Pete Carroll turned the 2010 and 2011 teams to 7-9 clubs. And those are very talent-poor teams, or teams that had emerging talents, but they were just not ready yet. But now, if something happens to Wilson, and he's never missed a game in his career, Seattle is undeniably screwed. Now, most teams are screwed if they lose their starting quarterback, but in this case, yeah, Seattle would be screwed. So the defensive side of the ball, you're about to say something?
We needed Russell to get traded. That would have been the biggest acquisition the Cardinals could have made this offseason, and I've said this on record, would have been Russ to get shipped out. No move that they could have made to their roster would have replicated that impact, because I think you're right. I think he is he's the best quarterback, in my opinion, of the last at least half decade in the NFL. I think he's better than peak Rodgers. I mean, you can only appreciate him if you're a fan or you're in the division with him. So the Cardinals desperately, and it looked like it might have happened, like when the Bears were making offers and like things were starting to heat up. I was like, this is really going to happen. It's great. This is exactly what the Cardinals need. And then it just flamed out. Now you've got all of them, John Schneider, Pete Carroll, and Russell hugging at camp. It makes me want to throw up.
Johnny D, real quick.
Yeah.
I share your same pain, but on this side of the thing, Deshaun Watson is about to leave my division, so I don't have any problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
He was a pain in my side for years. I can't, he's only been there for a while, but every game he's played us, I mean, the headache.
Yeah, headaches.
By the time the game was over. I mean, I lost my voice and all that. He can go.
I'm saying, right, you a little, you know what I'm saying, you kind of up there in age too, so like when you stress out, you know what I'm saying, it's more so we gotta make sure you take your heart medicine and stuff like that. So we definitely look out for it.
Hey, Ryan, you talk this way about Andrew Luck too? Same way about Andrew Luck?
I'm actually upset he retired because I wanted to play him again.
Oh, see, I can finally get a win on him?
I'm about to say that's all he want. He want that win that's just so hard to get.
No, that's right. Andrew Luck always beat Tennessee, didn't he?
Always.
Well, Andrew Luck retiring.
Every single time, and then retired. How about that?
Yeah, well, it upsets.
So he'll ever be able to hold that over my head.
It upsets Seahawks fans because there's a portion of Seahawks Twitter that just obsessed over the Andrew Luck Russell Wilson debate, and then that just went away, and we never got to see Luck and Wilson play each other a second time. That's the first time Luck ended up winning. But to answer your question, Rye, about the defense, I think if the pass rush is better, they can get enough stops to give the ball back to the offense. Sure. I expect the pass rush to be better. I was pleasantly surprised with how things worked last year after the Dunlap trade, and now that they've kept him. But the pass rush is going to have to be better significantly to offset my expectation that the secondary is going to be worse, meaning the cornerback situation. If the pass rush doesn't step up, I feel like we're going to be in the same cycle over and over again. And it's not like Seattle's got an easy schedule. I mean, Indianapolis is a wild card because I don't know if Reich has got this voodoo thing going with Carson Wentz where he can make him look competent again. But after that, the Titans week 2 with Julio, I'm sweating bullets already thinking about that. Minnesota with Dalvin Cook and Jefferson and Thielen, and then San Francisco. And San Francisco is always, a tricky matchup, whether they got a good quarterback or not. But they got an absolutely difficult schedule of teams that are not just good offensively, but good in specific areas where Seattle can be exploited. So this is going to be a very nervy first month of the season, because even with the extra game, one of the great things and one of the worst things about football is the margin for error is so small. in basketball and in hockey or any other sport, baseball, if you lose the first couple of games, you're not pressing the panic button. You got 82 games, you got 162 games.
Right.
In football,
Right.
if you start out 0-3, even in a 17-game season,
Right.
you're 1, 2,
That's
3
tough.
can't. You're looking at golf schedules, you're looking at tee times, you're looking at next year's draft.
Johnny V, before we get out of here, man, I appreciate first off because obviously we're gonna give y'all the opportunity to plug in what y'all got going on. I gotta know, Johnny, did you have a chance to watch Kyler in person yet? And at a game, I think he was there in 2019, so pre-pandemic too. Have you had a chance to watch him yet?
No, I didn't get there his rookie year, and then obviously last year wasn't an option. I will go to multiple games this season. To experience him. To experience him while we got him is what I tell fans.
Yes. I feel like this is the situation where I felt like for me, I felt like I didn't care how old he was. I wanted to see Adrian Peterson on the field when he was with Washington. I wanted to see him play because it didn't like even when he was with us, he still had that dog in him. He still had some vision. His footwork was still really good. He was a strong player. And unfortunately, Washington sucked. And I was a little upset. So as much as I wanted to see him, and as cheap as those prices were, I missed out on that opportunity. Make sure, and you said you're gonna do it, and I don't know you too well, so I take you for your word. Definitely go see that man, Kyler, because it's incredible seeing these type of special talents for y'all teams. I'm sure Mookie, you saw it. You probably saw Russell too. So make sure you see Kyler.
Yeah, he will undoubtedly. I mean, he'll light the stadium on fire this year. They have too many high-end talents offensively that I think that he will have a career year regardless. I don't know what that means for the team's success, but they're outside of an injury. I mean, last year he was on pace for. I mean, he still ended with 5,000 total yards, passing and rushing. And roughly 37 touchdowns, but he had a lot of that, like 3/4 of the way through the season. So I don't think, a 40+ season with, 5,000+ yards is out of the question. I know he wants to run less this year. The intermediate passing game last year was lacking, and they feel like AJ Green still has something to contribute. They brought in a couple external targets. So I think again, year 3. It's third year in Kingsbury's system. He's mastered it for what it is. There's no reason why he shouldn't have a huge year.
Absolutely. I think for me, like one of the younger guys that I'm gonna try and see this year is gonna be Justin Herbert. I'm still contemplating buying the ticket, but week 1 is probably gonna be the one that I try to go to. I'm a Skins fan, but at the same time, week 1 he's in Washington. Might as well give it a shot. And see him in person, but always a fan of the better quarterbacks. Mookie, Johnny, go ahead and let the people. First off, appreciate you all for joining us and spending that time with the Trap or Dive podcast, man. It's always appreciative on my end, especially y'all giving the opportunity. I didn't have to. With that being said, y'all let the people know where they can find you and what you all got going on. Johnny, you could go ahead and get your promo out the way.
Yeah, well, gentlemen, thank you for having me. It was fun. Love to do it again.
Yes,
you
sir.
can find me on Twitter at Johnny Venerable, and then I write for SB Nation's RevengeOfTheBirds.com and co-host the Revenge of the Birds podcast. And then I try to do live Periscopes post-game. Now that Periscope is not a thing, I'll have to figure that out, but thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Johnny B, thank you, man.
Take care,
man.
And Mookie, where are you at with it?
You can find me on Twitter at Mookie Alexander. I write for SB Nation's Field Goals, and you can also follow my tweets on Field Goals on the @FieldGoals account. And I also write for SB Nation's BloodyElbow.com. So if you're a boxing and a mixed martial arts fan, you like watching the UFC, I cover that stuff too. Otherwise,
You're the man, Mookie.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, go Hawks. I mean, let's get to September already, man. I'm impatient.
Man, I can't wait. Thankfully, training camp is around the corner for all of us. Less than 4 weeks away at this point. So We're almost there, Mookie. And by the way, Mookie actually pops up on my timeline. Like, he's a great follow. And with that being said, I actually need to follow him, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So he definitely has some quality. He has some quality tweets out there. So make sure y'all follow him and check out his information and his stuff. He has some good stuff. All right, Mookie. With that being said, I appreciate you. We actually have the Skins have, I think, Seattle this year. So I may try to circle back with you if you're down for some pregame talk. But we can cross that bridge when it gets there, Mookie, man. I appreciate you definitely for checking in with us.
Yeah, Monday Night Football, right? I think it's in late November.
I think so.
Yeah, somewhere around that time.
Put it this way: if we suck, I may just rap to you on Twitter. You know, I don't know about a podcast, man. I may be down in the dumps. But yeah, for sure. November we can definitely check back in. With that being said, everybody, I appreciate everybody who tuned in, and everybody who's listening. Obviously, if you're listening, you know, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Help the fellas out. Appreciate everybody for watching. We will be back next Tuesday with the Washington side of Trap or Dive. We got a rookie corner joining us. Kind of spilled the beans, but you can take a guess of who that is. I'll announce it Tuesday, but that's that. We'll check in next Tuesday and next Wednesday as well. So appreciate y'all for watching. Peace.